Welcome back, everyone. So today on this discussion that we're going to have, some stuff actually has come to our attention, our awareness, the collective's awareness as well, especially in the astrology and truth seeker communities, the spiritual communities as well. And it's got us thinking about something that we've constantly been stressing on the podcast, which is that whole speculation and the importance of building community. And I know it seems like a very general thing. Reach out, do what you want to do, talk to people. But I feel like there's more that we can understand and learn. Like, this is why we've been struggling kind of with this and where we've been seeing the lack. But we want to introduce what's happening, some of what's going to potentially be happening, how we can continue our paths or understand our roles that we're playing during these times as well, and how we can actually implement more of this community aspect rather than just talking about it, and how we could actually, make a stride forward. And the thing that brought this up for us is the recent news that we've seen how social media is going to start censoring through the algorithms, I guess you could say, or maybe not push it out as much of the astrological stuff, horoscopes, tarot, and alternative spirituality content that's on their platform. So this is going to be raising concern for a lot of people in those niches. This could be potentially affecting their livelihood, whether it's the livings that they make off it, or even just how they use it in their daily life. It can be a little bit of, a way of living, a religion in a sort of sense. But it should raise concern for a lot of people. Especially with what we've already been seeing on the world stage when it comes to censorship, the fight against misinformation, all these topics of rights violated. So if this is a constant occurring theme, I think we should maybe broaden our horizons when examining it, and not just maybe writing it off, because this could be a very crucial moment in time. And some people are panicking, and other people are trying to raise awareness during it and stuff. And I think the whole thing is to balance that out.
Yeah, well said. I think a lot of it also has to be what it's teaching me is we have to start becoming more proactive, I guess, when we see these things. And especially in the astrology community where we see these transits and we see the limitations of Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus and Taurus, and we have this big square, and you have that big Saturn Pluto conjunction, and we know all this stuff's supposed to happen. And then when it happens, we act like we didn't know the astrology. Oh my God, limitations. Oh my, you know what I mean? Like, so people, it's funny, what I notice is a lot of people take knowledge and they consume it, but do they actually apply the wisdom? Do they actually become wise when they do it? And I'm watching a lot of people, maybe, I won't say overreact, because this is okay in my eyes to see this as, especially if you have astrology, working for you as your livelihood, it's your religion, it's your belief system, it's all of that. And in all fairness, if people get to believe in a sky god and they get to believe in a, Muhammad and whatever else they worship and whatever gods and this and that, if you find the stars to be the things you worship or something along the lines, it shouldn't matter to anybody. And so we shouldn't be, if it's not harming anything, it should not be being censored. So if you are making money from this, if you're living from it, I get it. That's obviously a concern for anyone. Now, where I can kind of flip it and say it might be a little bit of an overreaction, because actually earlier today, Wednesday the 16th, there was articles I found of certain social media outlets or people from them responding to this and saying, hey, this is not how it's going to work. We're trying to, we're going to change some of the algorithms with the targeted ads. And that's because there's a lot of fake accounts and fraudulent accounts of, people will pose as an astrologer, say, and then send messages and try and get people to pay them using the astrologer's name and stuff. And pretty creepy, if you ask me. Like, who has the time, right? That's, to me, it boggles me that people really, like, that's what you do. Imagine that. Imagine being that low of a creature. But as a Pluto Scorpio, I try to see it deeper as well. Could it be maybe the elites or the social media game is aware that astrology is so empowering that they're doing it? Maybe, but that's conspiracy level stuff. And so, but I always leave everything on the table. And so with this news, from my side of things, from my opinion, I'd say that it's not something to overreact to or get afraid of, or say that something bad's already happening. It is being implemented on March 17th, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
March 17th.
Yeah. It was announced on
I
the
just
19th of January.
Okay, so March on January 19th. Okay,
Yeah.
I just think that once in motion, once something is in motion, it can tend to start drifting towards that direction more and more and more and gain momentum. And so because of that, that would be my concern. So now that we're sitting here aware of it, and even though it might not be anything bad, maybe it's just, okay, targeting ads, we're trying to help astrologers and tarot readers and all of that by fixing algorithms and the way targeted ads work. That could be it. But now that this has come to our awareness, to me, that's my sign. Because I read the world in symbolism. I read the world in clues and hints and things that the universe tends to mirror to you and say, just be aware of it. And so now that the awareness has come, what can we do as community, right? So we have the opportunity to use these platforms to come together more, to be in communication more, work a little harder to actually get to know each other and work with each other. So then we can gain and reinforce this community foundation, and because we could be in touch with one another, maybe get more personal, have phone numbers, have emails, and be in touch. Maybe this is that time. And will we look back on this time at the beginning of, say, this new little chapter of, oh, we don't know if this world is going to be condemned, the astrology world and divination world and all of that? Do we want to look back and regret not having using not have used these platforms to get in touch with one another and make things easier later? And of course, my camera dies, Gio. It's okay. I'm still here.
It's all right. We're still rolling. But no, you bring up a good point, because I even think about it in this way, from what a lot of what we've been saying on this podcast and stuff is, even with the, how we help in the manifestation, the creation of reality, just maybe not so extreme in some ways, like some have been portraying it in certain ways. But that panic, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't raise an alarm of maybe what we're seeing that's kind of coming about and being implemented. It's like that panic can create like a force, a resistance. So it may actually be, like you were saying, something that could potentially be helping those, astrology, horoscope, that type of content in that community and stuff like that. But we also could see how the panic and the fear can raise an unnecessary shouting back out, which then who knows, people may in turn take it, like we've seen, and be like, oh, they're trying to do this and whatever and stuff like that. And so therefore they talk bad against basically the overlords of the social media and stuff like that, and then actually do end up creating censorship and creating a ban and stuff. So I think we can see it going that way too. But no matter what, we're actually seeing this shit come to our front door, right in our own backyard in a way. And it may not be anything to right away scream and yell about and stuff, but here's where we can take into the awareness and understanding, seeing the overall shifts and the overall energy and stuff. And what tools are we going to use in order to fully decode it in that way and bring forth the best possible outcomes? I think this is a prime moment for that, especially when we're looking at how to create this element of community and the importance of it, and really, really stressing that to actually make it go somewhere.
And it'll take right action. It'll take patience, but it's going to take opening up and trusting. That's to me, this is what this stuff triggers. It's like, in my eyes, it's not the worrisome of how is this going to affect my business. And I get people are out there I get that. So I respect that. But in a way, nothing's happening yet. So now you have the opportunity to do something about it. You have the opportunity and window of time to now say, okay, I am now aware that this is a possibility of social media interrupting my actual personal and intimate life when it comes to my finance and, even my friendships, partnerships, family, because of course, money and career always affect everything else in your life. So it can be a fearful situation for a lot of people, and especially coming out of something like a pandemic. So with that, it's like, what can we do now? We should ask these questions. And how can we utilize these platforms for the moment and strengthen it and strengthen our connections, and then maybe build something ourselves. Maybe that's what this is calling for, right? So if we're following astrological law here, the North Node is now in Taurus. Taurus North Node is slowly building something and creating your own resources. So it would, to me, if you are an astrologer out there or a lover of astrology, wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't it make sense to then take this opportunity of getting out of the South Node Scorpio of fear and emotional upheaval and trauma and all that, and just jumping into the North Node of slowly building something new and creating our own resources and platforms and stuff like that, creating more connections, activating that Aquarian age energy and stuff like that too. So the answers are out there, and it's always seeing beyond the fear. These channels that promote fear all of the time or promote themselves and stray from the community and stray from a lot of these people help people, but more so of you could see that where people are benefiting more for themselves in the community. And I don't judge that, but more so of like, well, you're playing an example. So with all these energies now, how are we going to see it? How are we going to take action? What are we actually going to, how are we going to utilize the energies? And especially if you're out there loving astrology, if you love astrology, you know what the energies are. And so how could you be proactive opposed to fearful?
Yeah, exactly. We're having this beautiful synchronicity that's occurring, with everything going on, whether if we take in consideration our own personal lives and stuff, but even just on the tension that's going on, these revolutionary standpoints and stuff. So especially if you know the astrology in that way, or at least or you're getting into it or stuff, or if it's new to you and stuff like that, understanding in this way how we're seeing this type of cosmic consciousness reflecting what we're personally going through, what we're seeing, and especially through the synchronicity, that gives more weight to why we should maybe go into understanding certain symbolism and stuff like that. Like we said, not so necessarily look for a bad guy or be looking for the resistance in our life, because we will. I don't want to say we will, but we have the potential of creating that resistance on our own, but learning how to navigate the obstacles. And how are we going to navigate these obstacles once we start understanding, behind the veil of these, this symbolic language of the universe and stuff like that. We start to learn how to approach what we need to do in order to work on these things and use the energy to implement change. Even if the thing is that change can be uncomfortable in a certain way, but really being able to flow into this understanding of like, yeah, but this is the overall change. This is what's showing me of the season shifting even, but the overall bigger season that we're talking about. And that's how you can start to reflect it in more so of that way, especially knowing what you know about the info age.
Well, and just being wise with it, right? Like I feel like a lot of people, maybe they don't trust themselves or they don't have the confidence yet. But if you are learning this type of knowledge and whatever type of wisdom or divination or whatever it really is that you study, it's like, are you actually utilizing it and applying it? I look at a lot of astrology and I see how people could run with the fear of it and also the victimhood of it, right? They could actually not empower themselves through it, but actually make up the excuses and use it as an excuse of saying, well, I'm a so-and-so, so it makes me this. And then, well, that's just who I am. It's how I change, but yet it's there for you to transcend it. Right. So it's there for you to become aware of it and then be above it, work on it, solve it, and then become something new and integrate new qualities as a soul. If you are studying astrology, right? So it's so important to see it that way. So, I mean, you can interpret things however you want, but it better be having some sort of effect on you where you're bettering your life, opposed to falling more into victimhood or blame or anything like that, guilt, regret. You're in this meat suit. You're here to learn things, and we know this already, right? And especially in this area of study. So now it's like, how are we going to look at the planets today and say, well, where could I be proactive? And this was a trigger. I'm telling you, this was something that really hit me hard when it came to like, wait, I've been here before when it comes to moments. I've learned too much in life already as a young lad to say, when you get one little insy bitsy signal, that's actually a big sign that things are on the horizon. So Cam White, how he had brought this to my awareness and our awareness, not an overreaction, because that little itsy bitsy, he's correct, turns into something like this if we don't interrupt it. Let's get in the way of it, or create our own pendulum of a community and say, okay, like let's all work together. If you're an astrologer in the age of Aquarius, it's the most obvious thing. Start your own network, start your own community. It's to me, I'm not hardcore like an astrologer yet, but I've studied it long enough to say, oh, that's pretty obvious. And you could see it. You could see it.
Yeah, I agree.
That's where the universe is pushing us.
Yeah. No, it really is. And that's the thing, is you can see this in this, in what's kind of transforming. Like, this is an eye opener to be like, hey, all right, like we need to see, okay, take this actually a little bit more seriously now, as far as like we know to do these things of talking to one another, exchanging ideas and stuff, but do we really do it? And it's like, are we lacking in certain ways on doing that? Especially like, are we actually figuring out what our thing is that we want to pursue and stuff like that, that we are going to be all in about? And if we know that's what we want to be all in about, are we actually going to do what's necessary and do what it takes? And I think that's this transformative time right now is taking place. And there's bigger connectivities to what's led up to this point as well and stuff. So, when we're thinking about the people who are going to keep this type of knowledge going as well, despite what it goes through down the road and stuff, censorship or no censorship and stuff, who's going to be the gatekeepers of the data on this end and the gatekeepers of the knowledge? We already see who the elitist type gatekeepers are of data and information and stuff like that when it comes to a lot of how we consume our news and information and how we consume product and, going through our lives in that way. So there needs to be also a know of, okay, it's not about all of what they're doing. It's also about what I'm doing, what we're doing as the collective as well, of being able to preserve and also tap into a bit of our own power. It's the age of the we,
Yeah. And it makes sense then because everything works in polarities, right? To stay balanced. And so to work as the we need to become individuated in our own first, right? Yes. We need to find our individual self first, because then we can healthily become part of the we and integrate ourselves into the group. If you don't know who you are, you're just going to become the group. You're going to become what you're a part of, opposed to being a part of it. Like if the finger tried to be a toe, wouldn't work. So every part of your body needs to be what it is for the body to work properly, right? And I use, by the way, from before our conversation with the analogy of, with astrology, right, with manifestation, it's like things are what they are and for a certain reason, right? So there's natural law. So a finger can't be a toe, and they are their own things for their specific reasons. And the same thing goes to nature. And if you want to question the validity of, well, I manifest things, astrology, I could transcend the stars and I could manifest whatever I want. Well, it's like, well, if you tried to manifest the, that you didn't want summer to come, or you wanted all year to be summer round and you lived up in the north. And just because you set an intention to manifest something, there's something called natural law that you cannot change, right? There's objective law to this place. There are rules. This is a Saturnian rule of law. Like there is boundaries, limitations, and these things cannot change, right? So when we look at astrology objectively, we see that just like you can't change the fact that summer is going to come, you can't change the fact that these energies are here. There's energies here present on Earth, and you could see it play out in an archetypal fashion on the planet, right? So understanding natural law, it gives you the wisdom to not try and control nature, but to then ride the wave, actually move with nature in the way that it's kind of gliding you, right? And as long as you could get on that and you can ride the wave, that's what, metaphorically speaking, that's what astrology does for everybody when they become spiritually aware. You're actually starting to ride the wave of nature on an energy level. So then you can make the right decisions and you could see things before they happen. It's like having the weather channel, right? And you see the radar and you could see a hurricane's coming. Mm-hmm. So astrology is that radar system. And you're saying, oh shit, in a few weeks, this hurricane is going to be here. I better be prepared. Now, you're not going to be able to stop the hurricane, right? Unless you're the CIA and have weather warfare, 1952. Go check it out. But I'm just saying, if you're not them and you're just this spirit being in a five-finger spirit being, whatever you want to call it, then that means that you have to just prepare for it and ride the wave. And so looking at it that way, how can we then take the energies now, the things we see playing out from potential war to potential censorship of all the divination and all that? We have the opportunity now to come together.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's like what you said about that whole thing of being able to come to the identity first before we could go into the we and the group think. And it's true. You can't try to control those things or change them. The same way it also comes down to, I think, not being able to try to control or change other people's opinions and beliefs. And it's like, yeah, but doesn't there need to be a link up of opinions at least and stuff? Maybe not all beliefs, but of opinions at least, in order to create this type of community or group setting that's kind of revolutionizing things. And it's like, yeah, as you do. But the thing is, the over presumption of it, and then the fact of trying to shut others off, like we see social media, news outlets, that type of stuff, just daily news and stuff like that, whatever it may be, medical information at this time and stuff. Obviously that, they're trying to change their own narrative and stuff too, but it's not necessarily about trying to stop their narrative and stuff, by kicking and screaming about it basically, but being like, okay, well, no. What's the narrative that's going to be as well? That is there also and stuff. And that's part of the shifting. And it's like, which do you want to consume and allow to manifest? But you're seeing how history has literally shown us when it comes to opinions and beliefs, how they're supported by a small minority. And then often those small minorities are more so right in that sense, a scenario. And then the same way the other way. And it's like the opinions and beliefs in larger majorities and stuff, like governments as well, they're often times wrong when it comes to the real energy and the real swing of how things are going on during change. So I think there's a little comfort in knowing that no matter what's meant to be comes about, even if it doesn't look how you want. That's why opinions and beliefs need to be not so, it should be more objective, I guess, right? Would that be the right one? I always objective and subjective.
Yeah. Objective is like definitive. It is, right? So it's objectively the truth, right? That this is a solid object and all that's objective. You can't change it just by thought alone. But a subjective truth would be something like converting from religion or, Christianity to Catholicism, or, changing a belief. It's a paradigm in a way, right? So subjectivity is to the person. So it's someone who has a unique experience of their own to how things are happening. So the way that we actually see even astrology and any divination is all subjectivity. So if they're trying to censor things, which, by the way, I do have the article and I'll get it up, of the response to the freak out 2 days ago, where they're saying it's not censored. But if it were to, the argument would be, or debate would be, that astrology and divination are actually subjective things, right? No one's telling anybody to believe anything. It's the same thing as a religion, right? So someone's not going to, in the church, saying, you better believe in God. I mean, they'll say, you're going to hell if you don't. So you're kind of beat, but it's not like it's illegal or people should be censored if they don't believe in God. Because if you were going to do that to the astrology community and all that, then why doesn't it then block every atheist post you can find? Because it would be saying basically the same thing. And so, but atheism is subjectivity. Like objective reality is things that we could see, the five senses and all of that. And you can argue other things are subject or objective, but if it's outside the realm of the five senses, it actually technically can only be subjective to the person because, I could prove this light is on, but I can't prove that God's within the light. Or maybe I could, but that would be subjective to my own understanding. So there's a fine line there, and we have to learn it, but we also have to respect it too.
Yeah, I think there's a natural process. Think about it. When opinions and beliefs kind of come about, a lot of times what it ultimately ends up creating is some sort of innovation, one way or another, whether there's chaotic energy force, backing that as well and stuff. But it creates a type of innovation and growth somewhere in humanity and consciousness and society as well and stuff. I mean, like think about even, for example, in the early 17th century, the Catholic Church strictly cracked down on heliocentrism, right? So then the idea that all planets orbit the sun. But we know, and although that some, it's in the mainstream is that we know that to be true, the belief of geocentrism, the idea that the Earth is center of the universe, was accepted by the vast majority of Europeans at the time. And that included even the educated people as well. And then we know that Galileo, considered the father of modern science, then he was charged by the church and then has that vehement of suspicion and of heresy because the promotion of heliocentrism was in place. But an innovation came through that, of understanding now and being able to be like, okay, it's in our awareness now. We have to observe it. We have to find a way to work together on it. That's what's showing us the overall group aspect of it, is that no matter what, it's in limbo, this opinion or this viewpoint of this topic or this concept, it's in limbo, not to be one destroying the other or something like that, but to initiate the change that's necessary. It's the next level of consciousness, basically. And we see that a lot. And that's why history kind of becomes important in that sense too, as well. And this whole thing that we're talking about, censorship and misinformation, this is why we need to make it important about the building community, because those types of restrictions can have a lot more, difficult consequences. And with this thing that we're seeing with the astrology stuff, we're also seeing that it may not actually be that of which is being said, or that's raising the alarm. But that's not to also mean to sleep on it. And that's how we're going to kind of differentiate with understanding and looking at now this time with the elements and the language of the universe, how to interpret what's the nature of our reality at that moment, and what is the universe asking us to do that's going along with the change, and not to be thrown for a complete loop by the change as well.
Yeah, nicely said. And I think now that I'm thinking back again, adding to that is going back to subjective real quick. Someone could walk out on a sunny day and someone actually hates it and likes the cold, and the other person loves the warm. So you have people who hate the warm and you have people who love the cold. That's subjective experience in the same, say, standing right next to each other in the same spot almost, right? And they're having an experience similarly. So just like astrology, and I'm going to compare the two, of just like that physical experience, the energies being, say, Saturn in Aquarius or Jupiter in Pisces conjunct Neptune, which is coming up, and all this experience of deception, of overinflating the media and the news and certain things that go on. And if you learn the archetypes of these planets, you start to see that in the archetypal characteristics, things are playing out. And that's, using the right mind, using the right brain, seeing patterns and understanding through stories and sounds and music. And with astrology, it's you're learning the mythologies and the stories of these things and seeing the archetypes and the qualities play out. And so we could look out and say that this planet's here and it is this energy that's coming off as objective, but someone's experience, just like with the Weather Channel, it's going to be 80 degrees, clear skies. And two people are going to have subjective experiences of that objective reality. So with astrology, we're going to have that same thing happen. So these planets are in specific energies. It's creating a forecast. And with that forecast, there is this objective vibration going on, but we all have our genuine and unique vibrations ourselves, which are going to subjectively be experienced through the energies that are objectively coming down from the top of the firmament, up in space, I don't know, whatever you guys want to say. So, and to know how you're, dealing with it or talking with the vibrations of the realm is actually understanding your natal chart and your progress chart. And that's where this is where astrology gets fun, because you're learning your subjective experience through objective observation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're going to have awareness and remembrance of these and accept the fact that there's going to be different types of mentations throughout these shiftings in time, because everybody's going to go through and process things in a different way, like you're saying and stuff. But, reflecting and not just wasting the time, and actually reflecting on these different mindsets and the mentations as well, you're developing the mind of your individual self, which is kind of like that whole thing. If we're going to say it's Aquarian energy with a lot that's going on, the opposite of that would be the Leo part. And that has a lot to do with the self. And that's where we got to make sure that we're using that scope of astrology as like a balancing scale. It's to even things out in a way, and knowing when to stop, knowing when to go. That's the awareness through the significant cycles and transits. So, and this is a prime energy that we're in right now. And that's why I think it's so important, and why it even sparked even something in us, maybe not in the panicking way that maybe we have potentially seen from some of it. Because I've seen some TikToks, if I went to a certain hashtag and I saw some TikTokers actually talking about it, and they have more of that panic energy, and I understand it's the same thing like the people who, when, the Jackson vaccination stuff like was these mandates were implemented, right? People all of a sudden panicked, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to be able to afford my living, all this stuff, whatever. People panicked, and understandably so. These are people's livelihoods as well and stuff. But this prime energy right now, just like even then, is being presented to us right now, where we can find perseverance for potential through through what kind of is coming up in the reactive chaos or the fight or flight energy. How is that going to implement us to go and be like, okay, here's a change. I'm not going to resist it. What needs to be done? And there is guidance from beyond your own logic, beyond your own thinking, that can come into play and could really help you, And for example, what we're seeing right now is there's tension, and, how can we ease that tension? But there's also, through that tension, these revolutionary type ideas and momentum that move forward, and how to go with that for yourself, and also in turn for humanity as well. Because no matter what, there's also a miniature reflection within you of what's going on. And like I said, looking at the scope through the astrology as well, it gives us a gauge almost. And I think that's, hey, like, why not? If we're really wanting to make action and make movement and make progress and stuff in our life and stuff, can we really afford to discount certain things and just throw them off to the side and stuff like that? And I've always stuck with that thing that's always stuck in my head, that I always contemplated was, you may not like something at first, but once you start doing it a little bit more and you understand it, you may potentially start to actually enjoy it. And that's something I think to keep in mind, even with what we want to do with ourselves, on a daily basis. It gets down to that brass tack, and you see what builds off that as well. It's having that urgency, like we're saying, and yeah, be aware of it, but not to panic. There's going to be course correcting that goes on, but try to do it without the extremes. And we could do that if we stay consistent in doing the work and knowing how to be honest with ourselves and accept the task that's presented at hand.
And sticking together. Yeah, sticking together. Is about you using those individuation, because you had mentioned, the polarity of Aquarius being Leo. And so that's creating the individuation of your soul and your being and finding what it is you need to do and what you would like to do with your life. And the more you do that, the more then you're going to benefit the other, right? So it is a time to focus on self, but by the paradox is by focusing on self, you are focusing on the world. You're bettering the world by bettering your own. So it really truly is about finding yourself at this particular moment, because when you do, and you can give the world your genuine service and tender care and love and compassion through the thing you actually enjoy doing or things, this is all an excuse to live a happy life now. So especially with Jupiter and Pisces, where this energy gives off more of a like, hey, your dreams can come true. The paradox of that would be the fact that you over dream, you over dramatize the dream, or you overshoot it, and then you get nothing. This could be a time of great gifts or great disappointments. But so are you being real with yourself, bringing in that polarity point of Virgo and saying, okay, well, can I pinpoint and get real focused and steady and say, and use that Virgoan mindset of sticking to one thing at a time and really going after that specific goal and that specific thing. A lot of people are so undecided. Being practical. Yeah, I was looking for it. So yeah, being practical with these things and having the dream, having the vision, and then just scoping it into a practicality and to a discernment as well, because Saturn in Aquarius basically limiting us from other people and these communities and groups. Is Saturn's teaching us a lesson. Hey, this is how it feels to be isolated, and this is how it feels to be separated from the group or not have those people on your frequency. And for the past 2-3 years, or maybe even longer, a lot of us have felt a little misplaced or alone in this world, right? So we could definitely all probably agree on that. A lot of us can. So with these energies at play and able to read the astrology and say, hey, this objective thing, if I believe in astrology, and it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, you could believe that February doesn't exist, but February is just going to exist anyway, at least the season of it and the sun and where it goes, it's going to exist. You can't prevent it. So by understanding, say, the archetypal knowledge of astrology and understanding how these energies work and using it to your advantage of your subjective experience to have a proactive and a sort of having a betterment with your attitude toward your life and all of that, then we could start really formulating things and gathering as a community. And before they try to attempt to shut anything down on social media, we could actually take the action now to prepare for that moment so that they can't take anything from us. We actually become sovereign beings of our own and take action there.
Yeah, we definitely got to have that preparation. And if the past few years haven't taught us to, have a little sense of urgency with, preparing ourselves, but not being a fanatic about it. I mean, that's the thing. Like
toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. Toilet paper, whatever it may be. We've had fear. We've had anger that's come up. We've had restrictions, all those types of things. And all those things have caused contingencies in a lot of areas, whether it's economic contingencies or if it's even just social contingencies, which affects the mental health and the psychological aspect in people. And then that changes how people interact with each other. And that overall actually changes the whole structure of society and even the depiction of reality and stuff. And there has been that closed offness. There has been that separation. But I think the beauty of the other side of the coin of what's been happening through this time is the fact that it's forced people to go within. It's forced people to have to reflect on those things. And a lot of people have benefited from that. And a lot of people have, I'll even say the extreme, have perished from, that time and stuff, because whether they could handle it or maybe they weren't able to handle it, of really getting to see themselves and seeing seeing a glance at the illusions that they have so identified in their lives as well. And I think some people were able to handle that, some weren't. And if you were somebody that's been able to handle that, or you're coming into it and stuff, it's really like this time that you could just kind of see this transformation kind of occur within yourself. And now how to learn how to, when these themes keep coming up, you start learning how to be able to be more prepared for them, whether it's mentally, whether it's stocking up the right way, or, you know what I'm saying, or having resources, or learning new ways to, to provide for yourself and shit. These are the prime energies and the prime opportunities that we're seeing come about to us because, and I love that the first thing for me in this too came up was the astrology. I mean, I know that we're talking about, potential of censorship in astrology and stuff, but it's so funny how the astrology is a great way to start, maybe to reflect on those things. And you can see the overall like outer symbolism as well of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that feels most right, especially if you're in, this field, right? If you're studying it, if you believe in it, then what are you studying it for? If you're not going to apply the actual knowledge, if you're not going to actually sit there and say, okay, I see the limitations of Saturn and I see the square of Uranus and I see Uranus is in Taurus and it's ripping apart all the, the financial systems, and you're highly aware of these things. What's the freak out about? Hey, you've known this. It's time to be proactive. Now, if you don't know it, well, this is what you're missing out on. This is these things have been put out there by so many astrologers and say, hey, this is going to happen. Be prepared. We can't predict exactly how things happen. These aren't fortune telling things, but we're giving you saying, hey, we see this hurricane in the sky. It's coming 75, 80% chance it's probably going to hit here. Do something about it. Board up the house, grab your whatever. And it doesn't always have to be negative things. It could, there could be a fucking, I don't know, carnival coming into town. I don't know what you like.
They just be proper
I don't
investments.
care. I'm just saying, whatever it is.
And with the nodes being that we have North Node in Taurus, which has a lot to do with our possessions and our values and stuff. And then
slowly
Scorpio,
building too.
Yeah, exactly. So like you can kind of see, especially that, Uranus is right there. And there's been a lot of shakeup of how we're going to manage some of those things and how the community has been, shocked and shooken up and stuff too. Like, so that's how we can kind of better form these concepts for, okay, how am I going to fortify myself? This is the preparation we talk about. And a lot of that simply begins and starts with even the mind and the meditation and everything and stuff. And it's cool how we can learn about how to gain that awareness through the occult, through, the understanding of even sacred geometry and the astrology. And that's how we're binding it together with the astrology. And we're going to go deeper into those things in later episodes as well. Do you have anything that you want to say? Do you want to say? Because I think I kind of want to introduce maybe just some of the astrology and maybe some of the overall archetypal energies that maybe we'll witness, which we've talked a little bit about already, but.
Real quick, I'll just add this, that you mentioned the occult sciences. And if anyone out there that's new, or, you don't fully grasp it yet of what the occult really means, a cult or the occult are two different things, right? So the occult just means something hidden. And so this is from a book called Sane Occultism by Dion Fortune. And I just wanted to read this after you mentioned it. It triggered me to bring it up. Occult science, rightly understood, teaches us to regard all things as states of consciousness, and then shows us how to gain control of consciousness subjectively. How ironic. Which control once acquired is soon reflected objectively. I didn't do that on purpose, by the way. There's a little bit of matrix code for you.
Synchronicity right there.
Absolutely. By means of this conscious control, we are able to manipulate the plane of the human mind. It is a power that is neither good nor evil in itself, but only as it is used. The initiate of the right-hand path, dedicated to the service of God, conceives that it should be used solely for the purpose of bringing human consciousness to an awareness of God and all that implies when understood in its full significance. He uses his knowledge of the mind to make it the instrument of the spirit. Now, in contradistinction to the initiate of the left-hand path, who uses the same knowledge of the mind to make it the servant of his passions, occultism can never be an end in itself, nor a mere satisfaction of intellectual curiosity, but the most potent weapon in the hands of the intellect. Is it worthwhile for men of goodwill to learn to handle this terrible two-edged sword? It is not only worthwhile, but essentially for the safety of the race, for so many men of ill will have learned to handle it. And I'll stop it there for now. But that's Dion Fortune.
We can't get hung up. Yeah, that's why we can't get hung up on this thing of that there's just this evil presence. There's this oligarchy, fucking, just, there's always some sort of enemy. We got to understand that there is a role we play in the creation of this so-called evil or energy resistance, whatever it may be.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, to me, I ride with the notion that this place is a mirror to your consciousness, and there's a collective consciousness and there's an individual consciousness. And they play into one another and all of that. But everything we're experiencing on an individual level is only mirroring the things within our consciousness, within our vibration, within the information field that we're emitting as a light being or spirit. And then it plays out in the physical. So then we can experience those things with the five senses. So then we can actually change the vibration. When it comes to the collective mind, right? The collective mind's doing the same thing. So let's say the government, and I've said this before and I'll say it over and over again, the collective mind created the government to control the mind, the word government, as actually I think a reflection of themselves, us as a whole who don't trust ourselves to take care of ourselves, that we need a parental figure. We need a patriarchy. We need, just like religious organizations where you have the nuns and the women who were shunned, but then the patriarchy male with the Pope and the Black Pope and God being the guy in the sky and all that. But then when you look back in the, Egyptian religions, it was Israel, Isis, Ra-El, meaning the male, female, and the spirit, the mother, the
Trinity.
Right, exactly. And then now it's funny is Christianity goes the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They eliminate the female aspects of things. But when you place it back in there, you start to reconnect all of this stuff. And then when you do that, you start to fully understand these things, not only on a deeper level, but on a more interactive level, on a more, an intimate level. And so we have to be careful how we defined, how do we define these things and where we place judgment, and really humble ourselves and thinking, maybe you're not right, or maybe you don't understand everything fully to what it is. I'm a firm believer. If you feel like you're there, you're the farthest away from being there, because you should never feel like you're there. If you really think you got it, that you should just lay down in the pew and wait to get your rewards in the afterlife. And even though 6 days out of the 7 days of a week, you were doing shit that you probably shouldn't have, while God was, say, watching in your opinion, in your perspective. And then on Sunday, just because you went and repented. I mean, if all that, look, I respect all of it, but to condemn anything else, to say the occult is bad when you don't understand it or understand it, is to me a fallacy.
Yeah.
Or heresy, should I say.
Heresy, yeah. But yeah, that's like, the breadcrumbs are being laid out for us, but it's like as if, there's a trail of breadcrumbs leading from starting at point A to point B, but you're finding that path, you're finding that trail of breadcrumbs as well. And instead of going with it to find and come to the loaf, you're getting the breadcrumbs going towards where it started, where it potentially started and stuff like that. And that's not going to be as long lasting, or rather you can actually get the full loaf by going in this right direction and following what you're saying even here, what is the right hand path in that way. And there's a lot presented to us. There's a lot that's reflected in our reality that we could see that. And the same thing with religion, what you even said before, like reminded me of the whole Trinity thing, which is kind of something that is going to play hand in hand with that I bring up and stuff. But yeah, man, I think that's where we're at, and it's why it's great to put a little bit of importance on it and stuff, and to make sure that we're like, whoa, like let's process this. Let's process what's going on. We're not going to just be lackadaisical and take our sweet old time necessarily, but we're going to handle this right.
Yeah. And to add one last thing is, knowledge and force form the two arcs of the circuit of the occult, right? Not like having the knowledge and applying the force of that knowledge, which becomes then wisdom. And when these are conjoined, the power flows through us. And a nature which contains no force can study the sacred science, and no results will be brought about. And a nature which has no knowledge will be unable to utilize it as its force. But where there is both knowledge and force, it is only a matter of time until some illuminative idea gives a sudden glimpse of the significance of the inner life within all of us. But there is this subjectivity to that, right? There is this personal experience, and we all must abide to that. Using astrology, say, is, let's say you're not intuitively finding these things. If you need guidance, the astrology will give you the energetic breakdown. And why would the church not want you to read this? Because you're becoming empowered. Why would they not want you to meditate and use astrology and all that? It empowers you as much as someone out there who's religious. I hear them, they're getting up out of their bathtub there when they're in their, Scarface bathtub. And it was Michelle Pfeiffer. Just, I can't even do it. Matt McKinley. I love you. But yeah, no, sitting in the bathtub with your rubber ducky, ready to just, launch it my way, say, but in the Bible says that the astrologers stay away from the fortune tellers and all of that. Yes, there are astrologers that will take your money, but there are priests and clergymen that will take your money. Stay away from the fortune tellers. Yeah. So to condemn astrology is only ignorant, and to condemn any religion's only ignorant if you don't understand or understand them and have done the work. And the problem is, a lot of us have walked into our lives and taken on the traditions of our families and the traditions of our cultures. And yet the best thing you could do nowadays is actually separate yourself temporarily from these things to find yourself within, to find the individuation, and then reintegrate back into society and to culture and start recreating it and create your own in a way, and have you attract your own tribe, but your vibe and all that stuff. So
yeah. And maybe you need to tune up that inner tuning fork of that guidance of how to actually, oh shit, well, how do I know that I'm actually on the right path? How do I know what's what? If I'm doing good or bad? Well, one, that's a type of verbiage that you might have to eliminate, and learning how to become outside of that whole thing of good and bad, which we've constantly gone over again. But that inner guidance is what we're going to develop. That's the same thing with, you mentioned the Bible as well. Like the Bible also says, that God brought forth the Mazzaroth and the stars in the heavens, and let them be for signs, right? Well, okay. How can we take that and find a practicality with that as well? That's why we're saying and connecting the dots of being like, it's astrology, it's the ancient teachings, it's the religious teachings, but we're decoding these things and not taking them for face values into extremes as well. Because once again, that creates the panic, the disorder, the chaos, which even through disorder, panic, chaos and stuff, there is going to be an outcome no matter what from it. It's going to settle. It's going to go into that wave form as well. It's, you know what I'm saying? There's going to be highs and lows, ups and downs, balances in betweens and stuff like that. It's just which side do you want to be caught on in the ride? And so one thing that I found, anything you want to add at all?
No, that's it. We're good. Yeah. I think that was all I had to say about the occult for now.
Okay. And kind of just, I'm not going to go too deep into this right now, but I want to present what we're saying as a concept that was actually iterated by Dan Rudyard. And I like it because it really made me think about, okay, how can we look about maybe what systems are in play right now, so we can understand this face of the energy, the face of this vibration. And if we're saying that one of the ways is going to be through astrology, I think this is a great concept as well. Because we are dealing with, we said, Aquarian type energy, very Piscean or Neptunian energy, and, Scorpionic energy with Pluto and stuff. So he says about thinking about the threefold centuries as this unfolding of a three-part drama almost, but that there's also a prologue to it. And one way we can look at it is through the astrological come-tos over those centuries as well, but also the quality of what was happening within those centuries as well. So it pointed out Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries coincides with the threshold or a threefold crisis of world transformation. So mid 18th to 19th centuries almost acted as like a prologue. And then the 21st century is kind of like this climax come to the conclusion of the context of the drama that's been unfolding. And so these 3 centuries should be seen as like a great drama in 3 acts, a drama where their theme was the coming of this new Maya, this new avatar. And now you can think of it as like the 18th century, that he says it's also referred to as the century of lights, should be considered as this prologue, because of the fact of the context that it brings forward. There was initiation of idea almost in a sense. And that at first, the descent operates as a mental impact, stirring the minds of individuals, especially that are ready to act as critics of the past. But at the same time, they're able to resonate to the archetypal patterns of the yet distant future. So it's the seed patterning, or the archetype of this future is then being sown into the minds of few thinkers under a guiding pressure from far above their normal consciousness. And it's in the name of this intuitional sensing of a yet unclear idea that these individuals and others aroused to action by them, beginning to act as a catabolic agents, as destroyers of what the masses of the people are still then taking for granted. So one way that it was portrayed to this, if we're thinking of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, it's funny, and we're thinking about 18th, 19th, 20th, and I'm going to add in 21st century in that same way as well. And the discovery of those planets happened in the 18th, Uranus, 18th, 19th century, Uranus, Neptune, and then Pluto as well, in that order. So it's kind of, if you look at it this way, it could be like, also, wait, hold on. I want to let you interject at all.
What?
Do you want to interject at all or anything in there?
No, if I do interject, it'll be lengthy, I guess. So not yet. Okay. Continue through. I think I'd like to hear you explain the whole concept. The only thing, actually, sorry, is the fact is when things come to, in my eyes, when this is the one thing I do want to say is when you're thinking about this and there's discoveries of planets, when we find something in the outer realm, it's been discovered in the inner realm, right? Because it's always a mirror. So when Uranus was discovered, that means the aspects and what this planet meant to us as an archetype and as the characteristics we found in ourselves, or we started finally to discover that, and slowly it unfolded. And that goes along the lines of the same thing with every planet. Once we found Neptune, once we found Pluto, all of a sudden these things, it was maybe these things were always there, but it came into our awareness. And that's the way I would kind of look at, say, the physical discoveries of these planets or electromagnetic stars.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, perfect. I'm glad you inputted that, because that's important to starting this and kind of having a direction when it comes to wanting to break down these things, because there's a lot of parallels between, what's going to be shown in Discovery, the astrology as well and stuff. And we're going to see through the archetypal energy what's actually going on, or what we can interpret of the overall energies, and maybe what this cycle is that we're potentially in and know our place in it. So we said Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, right? Each one's concise of a period. It's the 18th, 19th, and 20th, and then even 21st century as well. So if we look at the first period, and this is how it even reflects to the more Hindu gods as well and stuff too, or the Trinity, like we were talking about before. You have the three Trinity, the 3 points of the Trinity and stuff, right? Right. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, right? And the first period could also look as the Shiva period, which is Shiva, the destroyer, which can also be known as Uranus, since Uranus kind of shakes things up, and it's the iconoclast and the revolutionist. And so during this period, so we see the changing of ideas, which seem radical at the time, but they're innovating. When we look at what actually ends up happening, they're actually innovating up against the status quo of that time. And it's just showing that that's a time for a shift. There's a time for evolvement. And this becomes the prototype. It's the impersonation of what human consciousness can imagine of what's to be or how it is to be. This is the model period and the basis. And then you have the second period, which can be the Brahma. This is where we saw a lot of Christian esotericism come in. This is the development of the father, more the patriarchy that comes about, this religious type order of really gaining its place in the world and its momentum, and this would be Neptunian energy, Poseidon as well, with the patriarchal paternal type thing as well, the Piscean age, though it's a mini age within it. And this is the coming about of the teaching and the teachers of righteousness, spirituality, and religious building. And then the third period that comes to point would be the Vishnu. So that's the sun aspect of the divine creative power. This is where consciousness is now more evolving into an awareness of its scent, of these three paths, of these three centuries, through the awareness of the discovery of these three planets too, and its relation to ancient teaching. So you're seeing how the synchronicities come about, and I think this is a good starting point. But during that third period, this is where core truth starts coming into play. We're taking more accountability of our awareness of ourselves and stuff too. So this is like 20th and 21st century where we're at now. And then witnessing the shadows of the deep, the unveiling. It's a lot of Plutonic Scorpio energy. It's related to Hades as well, because we're going into the depths of existence. And this is where we're having a lot of death of systems and rebirth of new cells, the transformation and transmutation. It's the plant being born of the seed from the first period that went on. The more Uranus, the mid 18th century, 19th century, we broke it. This is a breakdown in a smaller cycle to kind of give you a starting point. This is the third point we're in, the Christos, the God seed in man for uplifting potential. And you can relate that back to even the raising of consciousness, in these unconscious depths of human existence that need to be aroused, that need to be purged. And then the ghosts of the past must be faced and dissolved by the sword of severance, which Jesus, you can say, with the Christos, brought to the collective mankind before the new seeds can begin to germinate, perhaps under the symbolism of trans-Plutonian planet, which is along the lines of where we're at now, especially that we're seeing, yes, Pluto is scorpionic energy, but Pluto also is, and isn't Pluto exalted in Capricorn?
No, that's Mars.
Or it just works well in Capricorn.
Yeah, I forget what is Pluto exalted in.
Yeah. I mean, I could see though if Mars is also scorpionic.
Yeah,
I could see how
maybe
Pluto, and this is why we're seeing such a shakeup with the Uranus, and that's what I'm saying. This gives you a starting point. You look at those three planets, especially because those are big ones that have been activated lately between the pandemic with the Saturn Pluto conjunction, the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn as well. More of these longer cycles, and these longer cycles are covering a period of the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st century. And this gives you a track so you can relate to it as well. I think that's the whole point of why this stood out to me, because hey, I had to do it myself too. As we're talking about this news that came up for us and came up for all these, these specific communities, that's where the mind went. The mind went to wanting to see, okay, what's my role in this? And that's the type of awareness that you kind of have to bring about within yourself, is to be able to know when to act, when to move, when to sit, and that's where we're saying and showing how all these connectivities break down the existence of of ourselves and the reality that we're in, and that what's manifesting.
Yeah, and greatly to understand greatly the fact that what you just explained of traveling through the timeline of humanity and seeing how when planets were found and certain things would happen and unfold, and we could see the fact that as above so below, and everything's going on up there is going on down here. So when we become aware of this, is like, are we going to really be wise and be proactive? And I emphasize that so much. Like I just feel like a lot of people, they're filling in voids or protecting themselves from hurt and trauma and all of that, or play into their victimhood with this stuff, when yet this is the stuff that should be freeing you. So becoming aware of, like, why would you go and read the past about when we found Uranus and Neptune and all that? Because the finding of those things, and then the expression of those things coming out through human consciousness and all of that. Just like prior to you reading that, I had Dion Fortune saying, hey, all of the occult is just states of consciousness. So astrology is in the occult. And so these planets are these states of consciousness. And ironically, we find Uranus, and then it just kind of, it trickles down into Neptune and then Pluto. And then all of a sudden we're entering a new age, so it's almost like the primer to a new age. But we have this knowledge, so let's take advantage of it. We could see the storms ahead. We are aware of them. And if you're not yet, I mean, no offense to anybody, get off your ass and start learning astrology instead of jumping around. And I'm guilty of this, by the way. I'm going to click this astrologer and this astrologer. Oh, there's another Sagittarius rising video, and there's a Gemini video, and I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to take snippets from here, and I'm just going to whatever, and kind of no, learn it. Like, get disciplined, remember the core ruler of Aquarius is you have Uranus, but then you have Saturn. That's discipline. Right. That's order. That's, and obviously it's different aspects to Saturn and all that, or Aquarius. But the thing is it is going to take this discernment and hard work and dedication to things and a detachment. And so if you know all of this stuff, why have you not started applying it yet? And I get it. Life maybe isn't that, it sometimes can't be that simple due to certain circumstances, but that's the whole point. We're gaining this knowledge and awareness. And even say if it's not astrology, say it's just, you're listening to podcasts to get more perspectives. You don't really have a following. Maybe you're religious and you just like to hear, fine. But is anything in your life that you do every day, daily, does it serve you or does it not? And how can it, if it's not, like, how can you start integrating all of this stuff? And I mean, I emphasize the occult because the occult is understanding consciousness, which is the mind, which is something I think leads to the suffering if you're not aware of. I not to ramble, but I think it was actually from the same book, Gio. I think it was something about like how a man, when he's not aware of the energies, that he's not, like, he's almost being thrown around into this cosmic, like basically pool of shit. But it obviously says it in a way different type of, proper thing. I'm looking for it, but yeah, I mean, technically these things it's giving you I got it. The occultist needs to know the set of the cosmic tides in order that he may lay his course accordingly. And it is in this that the astrologer can help him. He does not, however, abandon himself to the drift of the tides, but takes them into his calculation and allows them for their influence.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we all have a general understanding of cycles. I mean, we deal with it with time, with seasons and all that stuff. So if we have a general idea, why can't we also build up on that? Because obviously there's a lot to learn in the physical, and there's a lot to learn about time and space and the existence that way, but do it in a way that you're going to learn about time and space and potential and stuff to the way that's going to help you be able to explore and navigate outside of that confined space of our reality of what's in. If we're talking about doing these very miraculous things and that maybe seem a little woo-woo or supernatural and stuff like that, it's also is coming from a understanding and understanding of even just how the system works. But it's not to get lost in the physicality of the system and becoming obsessed with thinking that all these things in the physical realm are completely, say like more so secret societies and stuff like that are not the complete overseers of the bigger picture. They have a part to play and a role to play as well in that, this IMAX movie that's being presented to us. But
Right.
there's an overall, and there's something to know more overall in the which is not, which is outside the confines of time and space. And whether you believe it or not, like there is possibly, and that's where the speculation comes in, that there's a potential to reach that side of things and reach that side of consciousness as well. And there's a lot that shows us with it, and that's why we're pointing out the synchronicities and starting with the astrology, because as you've seen, astrology then leads to understanding these archetypal things and its energy and its synodic cycles, its vibration, its sacred geometry. It's within nature, it's within ourselves. Oh shit, so therefore I got a starting point of where to work up, what do I need to strengthen up more.
Good point. And I think another good point to add to that would be that anybody out there who's just getting into this stuff, let's just say you're in the philosophy, but not astrology, you're in the psychology. If that's that's to me, follow that, but just don't, like, for example, I love music and I love astrology probably the most. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to expand in philosophy and psychology and see other points of views, because you don't know what you're going to get. And I think that's what like the mindset has to become, for at least for us to grow and to expand, is to get out of the paradigms, and even the ones that you enjoy, to step outside temporarily and utilize everything that you can, that you have at hand. And the astrology says to do that. And I mean, if you were entering, which we are, the age of Aquarius, which we're not there yet. I won't agree that we're there yet, because then it would be starting to build where things are still falling apart. It's very obvious we're not in the age of Aquarius.
But we're clearly in a shifting time.
Yeah,
it's not so rapidly happening. It's something that's kind of unfolding over a period of time. And I think sometimes thinking that it's just this radical overnight type shift kind of clouds our way of processing the moment of what's unfolding.
Yeah, 5D Earth, rapture, that type of stuff. It's just look, if it's too good to be true, it is. Even astrology, if you thought when getting into astrology or even the occult, that you thought like, oh, it's just if I do a few rituals and I pay homage to the sun god, and that, oh, if I was aware of my astrology, that I wouldn't run into anything bad, or I can control things. No, that's the big disappointment you find out. Like, I wasn't disappointed. I was already highly aware of this, but a lot of people enter the realm of astrology, a lot of it being that they're not in a great place. And when they do it, they think, oh, I'm going to learn this. And some think, oh, now I feel like I'm going to have control of things. No. You have the awareness. You see the hurricane coming. That means you cannot blow it away. It's going to still potentially come, but how will you prepare for it? So if you walk into this work and in any of these studies of the occult, and you have that fundamental understanding of it and understanding of it, well, then you're suited. You're, in a way, you're half initiated, right? That's what the initiation's for with these secret societies. That's what they were for. They were making sure that your character, morality, attitude and all that was primed to understand this really powerful and deep knowledge that was only given to certain people that could handle it. And I mentioned before when I read the passage about the left-hand path, it's using this knowledge, but for self, for passions, for the lower mind, when the right hand is for God, for the whole, for all of creation, for evolution. So you just have to prime yourself for these things. And if you could do that, like even so now, right, full 360 on, oh my God, they're going to start, censoring these, what were they called again? The targeted ads, and they might start shutting things down for astrologers and tarot readers. Okay, well, first of all, the evidence isn't there that that's actually happening, but the evidence is there that it can happen now. And that's the way I see it. So because of that, well, we have a decision to make. We have an opportunity, instead of seeing, oh my God, it's going to fall apart. Things are going to, this is going to be against me. This is going to ruin my living. Oh my God. And you lay down and give up. You have the opportunity right now. Even if we had only till March, you could still have the opportunity to do something. And what are you going to do about it? Well, let's be creative. Let's communicate and let's get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is why we're talking about this, because we're in that, there is a window within. Yeah, there's this there's a bigger time window and stuff. But because we saw in the macro, this time scale that we're in and seeing this cycle, you can see that down more to the more micro in your life. And being that, like you even just said, it could be all the way up until maybe having March. And there's a lot of astrological stuff eventually we'll get into even for the upcoming times. But um this is where we're seeing it, and we're changing the mindset. We're changing the mindset to be in a more harmonious, balanced nature and stuff. Because why are we able to access that? Because we're having this understanding of seeing the shift that's occurring, you know, and now we're seeing the importance, especially with something that's triggering like this, about the importance of, okay, how do I kick it into gear? How do I put up the kickstand so I can, not wobble and fall off as well? I need to progress in a certain way, but I don't want to get too overwhelmed and over myself, over my head with whatever it may be that I'm doing. So where do we find that? And I like how, even that whole thing of understanding, learning from our past through those three planets, through the centuries, through what's occurred, we can learn a lot about ourselves as well. And we could also learn about the energy so we can maybe better understand where we're at in the overall and how that affects us. And it's crazy because we are in that time shift of the 21st century, where in the 21st century is going to be, beyond our own lives, we won't be around for that exact moment or shift and stuff, but we are in the culmination leading up to that point and stuff. But in the 21st century, it is that major time period of actually making that shift into the Aquarian age, coming out of the Piscean age. And I want to actually bring up just this little part from that same book of Dan Rudyard. Is this his book?
Yeah.
No.
Well, astrological timing.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Great book.
All right.
Great book.
Share screen.
I love that book.
Okay.
All his books. I have a bunch of them, man. This guy was very not even underappreciated. Just people need to realize because they did already. I know some have talked about him, but let's realize it again. Like Dame Rudyard's work's fantastic.
Yeah, seriously, because I like the way he even expresses this as far as this time that we're shifting into. And this is written up without knowing really the 21st century as well in this way, but it's crazy how it actually aligns. So there's the zodiacal sign of Pisces has a passive, which we've been in the Pisces age, this receptive psychic aspect, but it's also the sign in which the sword of severance can be handled to cut through the phantasms of accumulated and festering subconscious and karmic memories, or engrams. In the sign Pisces, many generals and admirals have been born, including Washington. As the last sign of the zodiac, it represents both the karmic pressure of the past and the great effort of repudiation and purgation needed to overcome this past. It is the symbol of collective crises, of group catharsis. And when Pluto focuses its ruthless energy upon such crises, these indeed become awesome in their relentless and total character. So we can get a lot from that awareness and that understanding of even how those archetypal energies, if we can see how they actually are things that are within our grasp, that we actually do interact with this innate natural law of this intelligence that's going on. We can see now on the even micro scale of even ourselves, our shift in our own lives, our shift in our own mentality. What things are we growing on, or we're getting in the way of allowing us to be in this innovative time, especially with Aquarius ruling innovation and stuff? How are we going along with the process that's naturally flowing as well? And I think that's where you see a lot of that, going in that Piscean, Neptunian energy and stuff. And we've had a lot of interaction with Pluto, especially now, that's been very, very active. And it's like that next part of this inner shift as well and stuff. But the thing is, we still have that Piscean energy. We still have a little of that deceptive nature, that not knowing our boundaries as well and stuff with Neptune and Pisces as well right now, and the Jupiterian energy in Pisces. But there is going to be this radical shift, especially even in March, that's going to kind of like, I feel like that's really going to shift things into gear more. And, you know, you kind of have to have you defined what the work is for yourself? You know, I think that you at least gotta have that, or else it is going to feel bumpy. And do you want to create
Yeah.
less of the work for yourself and less of, you know, spare yourself the pain a little bit?
Well, and this is a time of the like right now it's a full moon in Leo, and it's a time to really have it reflect on your like where's your power? Where are
Hmm.
you Leo the lion, you know, in your life? What house is that in your chart? You
Especially
know,
you
where
Pluto
is it?
Scorpio people.
Oh yeah, no, it's time for us to like our time is now, right? So like
Hmm.
Pluto Scorpio generation, it's time to wake up and it's time to get things rolling because we're next in line. You know, we're the ones that have to take initiative and get out of our own traumas and get out of our own isolation. And the astrology, in a way, is actually in our favor. I believe that, right? So I think there's
Yeah.
activations going on, and so with
Mhm.
those activations, I see activations as opportunities, and with opportunities, you know, comes those moments in time where you can make a difference, and it could be in your own life and in the collective, or at least the people that surround you. And you know, if not, you know, what do you live for? You know, are you the left hand pather? You know, are you the slave to your lower desires and your passion? You're either one. I mean, I'm pretty sure Pluto and Scorpio generation, we probably have a pretty good split of that. I
Mhm.
can see that. I can sense that in a way that
Mhm.
traumas and bad situations and abandonment can lead a soul if it's not strong enough. And I'll say it that way is like if
Mhm.
it's not doesn't have the strength in its soul to say not give into those lower desires after experiencing suffering. Um,
Mhm.
Actually, it was in that book with the Wilhelm Reich. Actually forgot the name, but I had found a passage saying it's like they linked. He linked sexuality with either um, what was it with like destructive. It could either be of love or it could be of destruction, and but it's the same energy. And the like, you know, the fetishes, the pet, you know, you know, the turn-ons for people and stuff can eventually go from love to destruction, but it's the same it's the same thing, just the two, of course, the two different yin and yang of the expression of love.
Mhm.
And so if you can't have something that you love, you'll destroy it, right? So
Mhm.
same thing when it comes to, I feel like, the plutonic energy. Like if you like, let's say you with one of your parents and you love them, but they turned on you and then they passed away, and now you can't have what you love. Now you become probably something like the parent, or you turn to destruction because you can't
Mhm.
transmute that energy. So Pluto and Scorpio, it's such a volatile placement. And by the way, the exaltation, Pluto doesn't have one. It's just has a domicile.
Mhm.
So it's
Okay.
falls in Taurus and it's domiciles in Scorpio. There's no
Mhm.
exaltation. I looked at two
Wow.
different websites, and I'll have to do more research, but pretty notable websites. So I'll take that. I'll take their word
Mhm.
for it. So yeah, so we have Pluto in home. You know, he's
Yeah.
comfortable. Some of us have Saturn in Cap too. I'm one of those people. I have
Mhm.
Pluto at home, I have Saturn at home, I have Cancer at home, and then I feel like there's one more I have. That's like I had a lot of um, odd placements where I was given like basically these planets in my chart. They're chilling. They're like, yeah, I'm the strongest. I think that was actually it. Pluto Scorpio. Did I say that? Pluto Scorpio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Saturn
Mhm.
Capricorn, Moon in Cancer. Um, but anyway, when it comes to the time period you and I were both born around, there were so
Mhm.
many powerful placements of transformation. So
Yeah.
it's coming to the point now where we're becoming more conscious and aware. And we had this whole pandemic for things to really try and work things out spiritually and mentally. And can we come out this other side and
Mhm.
transmute this energy together, come together as a community and better the world? Or
Yeah.
Shiva, right? Was it Shiva? Destruction.
Shiva the Destroyer. Yep. Exactly. And that's the thing. Are we learning from that karmic past, basically?
Right.
Of even when we kind of zoom in and reflect on the culmination, the buildup. We're talking about times of your great grandparents too. There is a lineage, there is a root to it. And it's not just, oh, what happened in the 18th, 19th century that's so outside of ourselves. We're putting ourselves into that timeline to understand how that has been the original ultimate image that was going against the status quo, that was enacting change during that time, how that we're part of that drama that's unfolded. And we all have our ancestors that are involved and linked in with that creation and manifestation of the reality that actually occurred and stuff. So it's like we can go into that understanding of it, especially when we look at it as if this, when you're looking at the astrology, it's the stamping, the imprint of those moments in time. And we can reflect back on those times the same way that you can take a picture and look at it and reflect at a time, and it brings up thoughts, feelings, and memories and all this stuff as well too. So this is where we have this Akashic record for ourselves. We have this database, and learning how to utilize it, learning how to enhance it, and then learning how to, communicate with others to uphold this on a grander scale. And then really there is nothing to fear. There is nothing to worry about in that sense, because no matter what, that you're walking this path. But another thing that was an excerpt from that same book, I really liked it when trying to view the astrology a little bit more, and kind of go back to another time. It's the conjunction of Neptune and Pluto in 1891 and 92. It initiated the process which we see operating during this 20th century. It began the new electronic revolution. Now, think then and then think now. With the discoveries of X-rays and radium, with the quantum theory, and also with Freudian psychoanalysis, which led to proliferation of psychological systems and of techniques of psychotherapy. The release of atomic energy, which began when Neptune entered Libra, first atomic pile reaction of Chicago, and the atomic explosion of 1945, where further manifestations of the capacity inherent in a consciousness attuned to the rhythm of cosmic energy to perform in the creative, destructive mode of the divine. God is focused in the infinitesimally small, as well as in the immense, vast universal whole. I know I just couldn't read there for a second, but the release of God power in perfect and total performance is the meaning of divine sonship. We come from this initiated energy. We are the divine sonship. So we are the next process of creation. And this is the time we're in. This is why our century is one dynamized by activism. What do we see right now? There's a lot of outcry for rights, a lot of activisms, a lot of isms in general. It's the century of consciousness that become acting, that start really shifting in or setting the tone for this new age and what's to come. And, are you going to fall behind in your own way and stuff? And that's the thing we're trying to not necessarily avoid, but learn to work with.
Yeah, and it's funny you brought up the isms. I can't find the one section of that Manly P. Hall book talking about how there was this ancient knowledge and everything has just become isms, and we've broken everything up in so many different forms. And the way you had outlined the astrology from Rudyard's book, I mean, I recommend that to everybody. I recommend his work to everybody. That's a fantastic book. I love the breakdown of the age and the 12-step process and relating it to the houses, so that every age has an actual, like your chart has the 12 houses. That I think I forget how many years. I feel like 180 or 2. I forget how many, but he broke even the age down in like a chart wheel. But when it comes down to it as well, I mean, I think it's just understanding, like if you're not sold on, say, mostly the astrological, or you don't understand it, I recommend that you try to understand the basis of the occult or understanding symbolism. If you don't want to go occult, pick up a Carl Jung book, maybe Man and His Symbols, or studying some sort of archetypal knowledge, and just understanding the psyche,
the psychological aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and how archetypes work, like why
Mm.
is it you have certain favorite movie characters or comedians? Like why do you like that one podcast with them? Because you see
Yeah.
parts of yourself in those dudes. That's what it is.
Yeah.
What's the name again?
Yeah.
Was
There's Louder with Crowder, and then
yeah, there you go.
those ones that Chris D'Elia is in, The Fighter and the Kid. Yeah.
Right. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about them all the time, right? So
Mhm.
you see part of yourself in them. It's why you're attracted to them. There's a part of your psyche that's tuning to these guys. And then when you're watching them, you like them. You know that they're a
Mhm.
part of you in a way because of how it makes you feel. So that goes with anything you're doing, right? And in a way, being an artist for me my whole life has helped me see these things from a natural standpoint, meaning I'm always like, yeah, everything's a reflection of you. I even have a song called Reflections of You from Failure and Vanity, which I didn't write the lyrics or name it, but it ended up being one of my songs because Jimmy Allen had wrote it. But
Mhm.
I've always thought that, and I don't know if he did that on purpose, by the way, but if he
Yeah.
didn't and it was meant to be, that I always believed that everything's a reflection of you. Why do I have Vegeta on my arm? Like it's because his story, his aspects. I saw a part of my psyche in his
Mhm.
story. Maybe it wasn't the whole thing, but we're always going to see that. And so that's what I think is more probably if I had to say, well, if you don't feel like studying astrology or you don't really care about it, you don't even believe it, even though the moon affects the tides and the sun grows plants and all that, and all that energy is being
Mhm.
transmitted, but you don't, and you're 80-90% salt water, and okay, fine. If you don't want to, it's fine. But if more so than understanding the symbolic and psychological and archetypal knowledge, so then you could start diving into your unconscious mind to uncover
Mhm.
these things. And you know what? And if you don't care, then you don't care.
Yeah.
I think you get unlimited amounts of tries. Um, unless God gets fed up at some point. And it's like, look, if you're not going to try, I'm
Yeah.
not sending you down there. But anyway, I did want to read just to add on to my
Mhm.
point here. I'll let you go. Maybe you can say something about what I'm
Mhm.
about to read. It's actually from the Manly P. Hall book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And it's about the mysteries, secret societies, and symbolism. And maybe this will help some people see how it was basically approached or seen in the growth of the occult. So it says the answer is simple enough. The mysteries were secret societies binding their initiates to inviolable secrecy and avenging with death the betrayal of their sacred trusts. Although these schools were the true inspiration of the various doctrines promulgated by the ancient philosophers, the fountainhead of those doctrines was never revealed to the profane. I'll repeat that one more time. The fountainhead of those doctrines was never revealed to the profane. Furthermore, in the lapse of time, the teachings became so inextricably linked with the names of their disseminators that the actual but recondite source, the mysteries, came to be wholly ignored. Symbolism is the language of the mysteries. And in fact, it is the language not only of mysticism and philosophy, but of all nature. For every law and power active in universal procedure is manifested to the limited sense perceptions of man through the medium of symbol. Every form existing in the diversified sphere of being is symbolic of the divine activity by which it is produced. By symbols, men have ever sought to communicate to each other those thoughts which transcend the limitations of language. Rejecting man conceived dialects as inadequate and unworthy to perpetuate divine ideas, the mysteries thus chose symbolism as far more ingenious and an ideal method of preserving their transcendental knowledge. In a single figure, a symbol may both reveal and conceal. For to the wise, the subject of the symbol is obvious, while to the ignorant, the figure remains inscrutable. Hence, he who seeks to unveil the secret doctrine of antiquity must search for that doctrine not upon the open pages of books, which might fall into the hands of the unworthy, but in the place where it was originally concealed.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's where
Gorgeous.
you see the attention to having this awareness um of basically the holders of knowledge of this knowledge, the holders of this information. We can see that instead of looking at it like, oh, well, that was then and with this type of thing, we can also see how if we think in the sense that I don't know if this is string theory or whatever, that everything's happening all at once, a parallel, with its own moment in time and stuff. Um, we could see that as, hey, we could be recurring through that time period as well. So we are also seeing how that's kind of coming about nowadays with just like then, who's going to be the holder of this knowledge, the gatekeepers of this knowledge or information and the data and stuff, and how through the data or the information and these knowings, how are we seeing it be used in our own physical lives, whether it's physically equipping the body and physically equipping the mind and filtering out the mentations in order to feed our consciousness and not just feed our subconscious or in the sense of our ego. You know what I'm saying? Like we're learning to not avoid it, but we're learning to enhance the use and the function of the ego through the understanding of the data and the knowledge, because we're seeing this be a law in the creation of our reality. We're seeing that this is how it's fundamentally presented in order to create this structure. And then the structure changes. There's pivot points where structure changes and things got to crumble and come down. And that's how I would the relation to the astrology and the death and rebirth of the Plutonian energy. But okay, so that's the navigation point. This is what we're breaking down. This is what we're extracting from these teachings, from this understanding of these higher sciences too, and to look at them legitimately as sciences, you know?
Right. Well, and to be honest with you, I think this actually lands at a perfect stopping point for the next episode, because we'll continue to go deeper, because I do want to then, you know, I don't know why we explain ourselves. We're very much like the other, you know, we try to be conscientious of all listeners, and you know, well, of course, but so to let you guys know that we're aware that, you know, there's so many areas to hit, and astrology is a big one, and we are firmly deep into the learning and understanding of astrology, understanding and applying it and bringing it to you guys. But what we're also trying to do is integrating other perspectives and trying to just let you see the occult and astrology and all these different facets and different approaches, so you could at least just understand why people do these things. Just like, even though I'm not a religious person, I at least took the time out to understand why would they believe that. And then by doing that, it gave me more wisdom and understanding on things and understanding on things, where now it's like, by gaining that perspective and allowing myself to just suspend my beliefs just to see through the lens of another person and try and fully use my brain and say, this is probably why they would want to believe this. You start to gain power, because it's perception. Perception is power. Perspective is power, because you're starting to gain choice. But if you follow just one simple path and you know, one religion your whole life, you've never fully explored, and you think that God put you here, and if you don't follow the priest and the guy right off the top, say, and he's going to punish you for not experimenting and finding him yourself. I mean, wouldn't God, right? Wouldn't he want you to step outside the church and tell them to go screw, so you can find him organically, opposed to saying that this guy says, no, you don't have to find him. He's right here. He's right here. I just, we're going to, you know, read this prayer for me, put $10 in my basket, you know, if you want, invite your son over later without you, especially if he's under 10 years old, just so I could teach him a few things. But the thing is, you know, it's a thing of the Jesuits, by the way. Said, give me a boy at 8 years old and I'll show you what. I thought, what was that? That was a phrase. Someone should look that up. Serious.
Give me $1,000 to send you a rag. Shouldn't it be working for us?
Nice handkerchief.
Isn't this the thing that we should be reflecting on? And that's the thing, is we may constantly want to point out the hypocrisy of others and shit like that, but are we reflecting on how that's a reflection of even our own hypocrisy in our life? Maybe not to the same extent of which is outside us all the time, but it's there. The concept and the principle of it is there and stuff, and checking our own hypocrisy, not to try to, you know, also in the same breath, not trying to silence other people's viewpoints, but knowing how they coexist together and how they work together, and
respecting it all.
And coming to a universal truth, because that's, I think, with a lot of what we're seeing kind of come about, and what we're in conflict and all the tension is about as well too, is this, which way is life going to go now? Which way, you know, we've made it up to a certain point, I think, even if you think about the United States and even thinking having its Pluto return as well, that's happening and stuff like, it's a long process, a long period of time as well. We've had already things that have implemented that type of energy, but like even us, we are still a young nation, still developing, and we've ridden a system for a long time. There's got to be, and there's got to come a point where things are going to fucking change. And that's where it comes into seeing the broader spectrum of it and being like, okay, I need to have an acceptance here. And I need to know that, hey, things may not look exactly the same anymore. Am I going to keep holding on to and crying about the fact that it's like, oh, but this is not fair. It shouldn't change like this. It's like, no, what do you're going to be like, okay, I got to adapt. Okay. I got to see how I could still stay in my truth through all of it.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's about being proactive. And we started this off really focusing on community, and it is important, but we're also, there's this individuation process we all have to understand, and using, emphasizing astrology because it is a fascinating tool. It is something that could give you could see the hurricane coming. And then, so because we could see it's 25 miles offshore and we have all this time to prepare, just like right now, this little thing happens with TikTok and Instagram, and maybe we overblew it, maybe we overshot it. Oh my God, they're just trying to help us with the targeting ads or whatever it could be, whether good, whether bad, whether serious, whether not. We potentially see some dark clouds out there. We don't know if it's a storm yet, but we're out here, clear blue skies at the moment, maybe not clear blue, but like, you know what I mean? And we have the like it's saying, okay, maybe I should go grab the umbrella out of the trunk and certain things, just in case the storm comes, I could place it in the sand, sit here and allow it to pass over. It's just a metaphor for saying, hey, the radar is on and we have the opportunity now to come together as a community and get to know each other more and make this Aquarian reality an actual reality, opposed to some mental reality of 5D and the man bearing the pitcher of water and there was symbols and symbols and symbols. It's like, let's really make the symbols a reality. And this is what it's going to take. So, and by the way, once again, shout out to Cam White. I try to message him and I'm a pain in the ass, that guy, because I'm, music, astrology, like, bro, we're fucking on the same frequency. Sag rising, motherfucker. Let's go. Let's make some music. Let's start some astrology shit. Let's do some podcast, whatever. Like, and if anyone's out there thinking, because I feel like some people who have more views, I'm not saying Cam, but there's certain people that maybe I email or that I deal with that have certain like more views, subscribers, that they think I'm trying to email them or comment them because I'm trying to feed off and leech off their subscribers or whatever. I just sense that that's what it is, because why are they so shut off? It's like,
everybody's got a lot of defensive position.
They do. But like, you look at mine and you see, say, what, 340 or 50 subscribers, and you think, what, I'm just trying to, trying to just play with your bum a little bit so I get a few subscribers over my way. It's like, no, this is how we're going to build a community, is trusting one another. And use your inner tuning fork. Like, read people, give them a chance though. I always give people a chance. I make a read, and I usually make a read without telling them.
Don't always expect the worst of everybody too. Hold yourself to a standard of kind of what's going to mesh well as well with yours. But that's a big part of the reason that's why during these times right now, if we're trying to build up more of the community aspect and learning how to communicate with other people and stuff too, it comes down to the point of being able to respect each other's timing and respect each other's processes as well, because we want that as well in return as we're having our own evolutions and our own growth and stuff. This is the revolution. It's through our own growth, and being able to connect through the processes and respecting each other's processes as well. So there's something else I was going to say with that, because I forget it. But anyway, that's really what we're seeing that's kind of coming about with this type of thinking of, okay, how do we actually create that community? How do we actually connect in that way? And it's stop being so scared of your own shadow as well, which your own shadow is your own self, but it also is reflected as other people too. And that was the other thing I was going to say. It's like, really, that's why we're looking in these areas, because these areas are helping us understand the different personalities that exist without there. And there's archetypes behind those personalities. And once again, we're creating a blueprint for the understanding of the psyche as the collective, as the whole, and as the individual. And even if we're looking at other individuals, we're seeing the emotional processes, because all this creates, and all this emotion and belief and thoughts and stuff like that creates action and creates reality and stuff. So we're seeing other people as if we're seeing ourselves, learning about the psyche in that way, and of course ourselves, and seeing in that way, learning the psyche, breaking it down through the symbolisms, through the astrology. That's how we're getting back to knowing thyself, really coming and building it within the temple. And then we'll get to what all those things mean. We'll get to more astrological transits as we go through this too.
Right. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure we laid a good foundation here, and we're going to grow on. We'll expand on this more and more, and we're going to try and be in touch with more people. Shout out to Jax Atlantis and also Ann Wolke too, who we've been in contact with, and historical. I wanted like a shout out to Historical, the documentary series where there was one of our first real collaborations. We had, David Weiss and Santos Bonacci on the show, but they came and went, and that wasn't really, we stuck around with Jackson and Ann, and we're working with them in a way. Right. So in a way, we see that as the beginning to our journey of, expanding out, reaching a hand out and say, hey, I don't mind working with you. Like, let's collaborate. Let's see something. I do the same thing with my music, Paradigms Productions and my bands. Is like, I reach my hand out and say, hey, I'm going to trust you. If you do anything though, I will drop you, but like, I'll trust you. I'll put my hand out and try and lift you up and say, hey, like, let's get something rolling. If we don't start doing this, I mean, I really think the pandemic, the real one is depression and loneliness and stuff like that, right? It's the lack of the Leo energy and the Saturnian Aquarian coming in and giving us this lesson. And we have to hit that Saturn Aquarius with that that warmth of the Leo, and start reaching our hands out and really, and risking yourself a little bit, set a foundation so no one can destroy you. Know who you are, set your mission, go after it. But the thing is, at the same time, there are those risks of sticking your hand out, and someone may try to pull you down, but that's why you build your structure now, and you put yourself in place where you're concrete to your path, so no one can pull you off your path. And the only thing you could do with them is pull them on yours. And if they decide to try and manipulate that, let the universe, I'm telling you, man, we got to also hey, the spiritual community, learn to trust the universe too. I think people have a problem with that.
You got to trust that. You got to trust that process and that natural order of things. And
right.
What was I going to say? That's this whole thing. There's this initiative. I don't know if that's the word I was looking for. It was another I word. There's an incentive. The incentive is there for all of us right now, and that's something that we're creating even for ourselves. And if you're listening to this, there's a frequency even what we're creating here at the Daily Transcendence podcast as well. Like you were saying, even working with Ann and Jax and stuff, even the work that we've done with Phil and his podcast, and the people that seriously, shout out to Phil, Unexplained Incorporated. With a lot of great talks that he has with different walks of life and supernatural things, and also entertaining thoughts. And also gave us into connection to another side of astrology that even me and you, Ray, we don't necessarily have such a broad understanding like we do, for a lot of the astrology that we talk about, like something like sidereal. And I'm looking forward to what's going to come, especially working with Jackson and more and Phil at Unexplained, and even this astrologer, Amanda. It's also going to, that's the example that we're creating, is this type of learning how to communicate and learning how to build this little bit of community and the cycling of energy, because there's a lot to be taught, whether it's, there's a lot of exchange there. Like even the whole thing of Amanda, it's going to give us a better understanding and link it to our own understanding now that we have, and what we both come across, to see more so of how sidereal works in that way. Maybe it's a broader aspect of the psyche of which we're trying to dive into to understand of ourselves, and knowing how to pull ourselves out of maybe the funky wonky energy that's going on.
I always saw it as and we won't go down this rabbit hole because we'll just start all over. But I would say that, sidereal to me is the collective. That's I always saw it as it's the whole. It's the universe itself. It's where the universe is at. It's where the collective is at. And there's probably layers. And tropical is like local to you, local to
Mhm.
your own life. But that's just right now, that's an observation. I am
Yeah.
not well read in Vedic. So that's why we are saying it's going to be exciting to bring these
Mhm.
people on here, or us also return back onto Bill's show as well, and just entertain
Mhm.
these things and not scare people away of going, it's the evil screen, it's the devil, it's the archons, don't look there, just look on your computer screen and keep analyzing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Can we grow
Mhm.
up, and can we just learn to crawl down these rabbit holes and allow ourselves to study them and understand the fascination of them? And let's not scare people away from them. There's certain people out there. I like to, I just I feel like we could handle things a little better with the not
Mhm.
realizing we're instilling fear or a hopelessness. There's a
Yeah.
hopelessness that comes to along with the whole fact of saying that there's this, that life is basically a trap.
Yeah.
That
And even
it
just the
could
world
have
stage.
yeah, right, but it could have qualities of being a trap. There could be traps
Mhm.
within life and the mechanism of life. But
Yeah.
to consider life to be a trap itself, it's a very depressing
Mhm.
outlook. So,
Yeah.
but we'll find out who's right, right? Like let's entertain
Mhm.
it. Let's have fun. Maybe it is. That's how you got to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. Let's open ourselves up to, we're going through this evolving standpoint in life. So let's actually do something. Let's use the time to evolve, and that's
Right.
going to come through different thinkings, different speculations and contemplations of thing, and looking in other areas, and also reaching out hands and listening to other people, like, and seeing how they're perceiving life through their own lens, through their understanding, their beliefs, their emotions as well. And this is what's culminating that information age, that universal thought and groups and everything, that the Aquarian age that's to come in this century. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to come from us, especially in the next few episodes, breaking down a little bit uh, more of the current energy that's ahead of us as well, and stuff too, where we're at, more of the astrological parallels, how we're going to even how we can use understanding these through the symbolic references of what's been taught before, what's been kept as secret knowledge. This was just a brief overview of what's to come. So, and be sure to hit that like button, since we're talking about algorithms. It really helps out. And hit up the comments. Really like to see more people hit up the comments and kind of see maybe where they're at. This comes point with getting feedback, not feedback saying, oh, how we're doing or the podcast or whatever, but what thoughts come to your mind? Where are you at right now in your process and stuff? Where can we gauge one another and use each other as tools and instruments as well? And this creates that kind of more of harmonious nature as well, when it comes down to that. So
Right.
do that up, and yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah. All right, guys. Till next time.